It's the Board Game Blogger. Today I'm here to review Last Will. Now this is sort of an economic engine game put out by Czech Game Editions, and it really adds some neat new elements to the economic engine genre. The theme of the game is your rich uncle has just passed away, and he's left in his will to his various nephews a little bit amount of money, and then the goal is to quickly spend the rest of the money. And whoever spends and runs through their money quickest inherits the rest of the fortune. What's neat about this game is you're not always starting with the same amount of money. Sometimes you start with 70, sometimes you start with 100. And because of this, the same sort of plan and engine isn't going to be the most effective for every particular type of game. And I think that adds a lot of replayability, because you might have an engine that's slower to get going, but then it's more efficient, and that would be better if everyone starts with, say, 100, but in a game where everyone only starts with 70, that might be too slow of an engine to run through your 70. So I think there's a lot of replayability in this for an economic engine game. Sometimes some economic engine games, they get too stagnant just because of what happens in the game. There's always clearly the best path, and here that's not necessarily the case, because the game's going to change. The way the game starts is going to change each time. And additionally, what the new wrinkle in this game is that you build up your economic engine, but then you need to tear the engine down, in that you build properties which you can quickly spend the money on, but then you need to sell off those properties before you actually spend all your money. And so there's some neat twists on the economic engine genre. However, there is it is limited player interaction, and that's one of the big things. I'm sure if you've watched a lot of my reviews, I really like player interaction, and it's a little bit limited in this game. So I'm not sure how long I'll be holding on to this game, just because I personally like games with a little bit more player interaction. But I think there's a lot of great tension in this game. You can see what people are doing, how much money they have, and you do have a slight ability to block and affect what other people are doing, more so than, say, London, a game I recently reviewed. And so I think there's more tension and more player interaction in this game than there is in London. And I think if you're a fan of the economic engine genre at all, you'll absolutely love this game. But it is light on the player interaction, and so it's not my favorite type of game, but I think for the economic engine genre, this does a good job, and it has this wonderful Victorian theme with great artwork, and it's a really beautiful game to look at. But let's see how the game actually plays. Okay, so here's sort of the game on setup. Now at the very beginning of the game, there's a couple of different potential will cards that the uncle has left, and we have the reading of the will. And so we'll flip one over here, and our rich uncle has given us 120 each. So we would distribute 120 to everyone. There's different values in the will card, and so at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to start with the same amount of money, but it's going to vary each game. As I mentioned earlier, I think that's sort of a neat feature. So we then distribute that 120 to everyone. Next, each player would draw 3 helper cards and 3 property cards. Now you'd examine them, and you'd only actually keep 2 of the potential 6. Now you could keep 2 properties, or you could keep 2 helpers, and they do different things. One of the issues with this game is because it's like a multilingual edition, there's the symbols on the cards. And so what you have to do really is, the first couple of times you play the game, is you have to check with this chart on the rule book. It's a well-written color rule book, pretty clear on everything except the various symbols and what they mean. So here for this valet, what it translates to is it means that once per round you can have 1 extra action for playing a white bordered card, and these white border cards are the event cards, and they're sort of one-time use cards, whereas helpers and properties are, are multiple use. So here, this is my green personal board, and what I would be doing on my turn is using actions to play various cards. So I would spend an action and put it down on the board. But let's sort of see how it plays going through a turn. So what we have up here is sort of the turn order and the various, what is done with the various actions. So starting with the player who last bought something, you're going to have the various players putting down their markers and taking different things. Now, the furthest one to the left here, they will go first, and they will get to do their actions first. However, it might not be as valuable. So here I'm green in this game, and let's say there's also a yellow and a blue player, and that the yellow player was the last person to buy something. Now the yellow player chooses to go here. This will give them 2 additional cards of their choice, 2 errand boys to do things, which I will get to, and then 2 actions. Now actions are really the bottleneck and the constraint in the game. So it's really imperative to try and maximize your actions. The blue player will go next here. Now they get a lot of cards. They'll get 7 cards. However, they go after yellow. They only get 1 errand boy, but they still maintain 2 actions. Now, I'll choose to go last here. Now, I go after the other players, but I still get a couple of actions. So now we'll play the various errand boys, and I will zoom out here. Now the errand boys can be used in a couple of different ways. You can place an errand boy down here on top of one of the particular cards, and you just get that card into your hand. So that might be a way to get cards if the slot that you chose in the game doesn't actually give you any cards. Now the blue player will get to go. Even though yellow had 2 errand boys, they don't get to place them both down. You could go here and just sort of draw a random card of your choice. You can go to the opera for 2. You can go over to here and rearrange the property values. Now this is key because if we review what I decided to keep in my hand, I've got this orange property. So what I want to do is I want to increase the value of the property when I'm purchasing it, which I have. It's going to cost an additional 3 over top of what the normal price would be of 15 here. And then I want to sell it at a different price. But unfortunately the blue player, not knowing what I have, but he wants to make it advantageous to him, he's going to go here and switch the property values, and he can arrange them in any way that he wants to. Now I get to go with my choice. I'm going to go over here with the old friend, and the order here matters. So I would have actually drawn 2 additional cards. So everyone takes the cards that they would pick from the draw deck, and you can pick any ones you want. I would have grabbed 2 more properties, and that would have happened before people are placing down their errand boys. Now it's back to yellow again. I've taken this, yellow's taken this, and yellow will go here for the wild card for a companion. So companions, the wild card and the companion card must be used on the turn you take it. You cannot store it. Normally your hand limit to carry over to the next round is 2 cards. That can be increased by certain units. However, you can never actually store the wild card. And the wild card is a type of companion cards. Now, if I examine here this potential townhouse that I could build, we see there's sort of this white symbol and this pink symbol. Now this is for a chef and a guest. So once I build this townhouse on my player aid board here, I could then use guests to in fact increase it. But for my final action as green, I will just go here to the opera and just dispose of 2. Now we'll say the yellow player, they spend their actions, the blue player does their actions, and then here I will do my actions in front of my player board. So we have 3 actions left here, and we can move it up and down as we're doing the actions. I will want to play this old friend I have. I'll play him down here. Now that costs an action to put him on your board. That's what this A symbol is. But then I can use him. The check mark reveals that I've used him for the turn, and he grants me an action. He's sort of just an old friend who will help me quickly waste my money. I then also, with these 3 remaining actions, I could choose to put down the valet. That costs an action. It's not very useful right now as I don't have any events in my hand, but he will allow me to use events into future rounds. And I have 2 actions left. And now examining what is expensive and what is not, I probably want to build this house. And I'll build this house and then pay the appropriate amount. Now if we zoom into the properties here, I would have paid 20 plus the additional 3 for 23. Now this symbol here is sort of the maintenance cost, and so each turn I could spend $4 to maintain the house. It costs an action to do so. However, some helpers might allow that to be a free action. If I don't do anything, the house will degrade 1 on the next turn, so I will lose $1 if I haven't spent the action to maintain it. Now if we move over to this card, it costs 3 to maintain the value of the house. However, if I have a chef there, which I can permanently have by playing a guest card down, it costs 5. If I then add on a guest as well, having a chef and a guest, it would cost me 8 to maintain. So that's sort of how you're building up your economic engine. Is you're building up these properties and then putting various companions onto the property, and you're creating synergies with different people. For instance, there's the steward. If I put him into my building instead of the valet, I could have him maintain a building for free. So I could just spend that for free without using an action. Now also, if you notice, I only have 5 potential places to put down these black bordered permanent cards. These white bordered cards are one-time events, so you just use them once and go, but you can also increase sort of the size of your board by going here on the board with your action and gaining an additional board. Now in a 4 or 5 player game, there's actually 2 of these spots to be selected each round, but in a 2 to 3 player game, there's just 1. And I would go here. I've now added on to my board, so I can put down more and have a greater economic engine. Now in a 2 player game, it's basically played the same way. You're on the 2 or 3 player board, but each player, when they're placing down markers here on the board, they'll place an additional one and block out potential choices for the other player. So it's still a good game with 2. It's just almost as fun with multiple players. But as you can see, it's mostly just multiplayer solitaire. You're just sort of building up your empire, and for the most part, you're just doing your own actions. You can affect other people's property values by going here. You can see what people are building and try and deprive them of potential cards. And even more importantly, on this player order thing, you can see maybe if someone needs a lot of actions, and you can deprive them of how many actions they get that turn. So I feel that there is enough player interaction to, you know, to keep playing the game. I love player interaction. Usually I stay away from a lot of economic engine games because of the multiplayer solitaire aspect of it, but I find that there is enough limited player interaction to make this game interesting. There's a lot of tension because you see how much money people are using and where they're running out of money. And you know, do I need to gamble here? Do I need to take this risk? It's not hidden like in London. And then, you know, the artwork, it's beautiful, and it's a fun game. And if you're at all interested in an economic engine game, I'd say, you know, don't hesitate, grab this game. It's definitely a winner. But if you're afraid that there might not be enough play interaction, I'd recommend that you maybe just try playing it with someone else first, because I find that there is enough play interaction to make the game fun and enjoyable. The artwork's beautiful, but it is on the lighter side of player interaction, but it's still a great, you know, medium economic engine game. And what's really exciting is, you know, you're building up these properties, you're putting on companions, you're making them more powerful, but then when you're running out of money, you must then resell the property and have no assets left when you actually go bankrupt. So you build up the economic engine and then you tear it down. And I feel that that's a kind of a unique mechanic in a lot of economic engine games that would justify a purchase of this game, even if you already have a couple of similar economic engine games. This is different enough. Anyway, till next time, I'm the Board Game Blogger.